What up, my good people? Going through it kind of bad today, man. Being haunted. Not your normal spiritual haunting, like the demons of the past or anything like that. Nah, man, I'm being haunted by all the spirit of all the good men. The spirits of all the good men. That I encountered during that 12 years when I spent behind the walls of a maximum security penitentiary. We'd like to think that all of them belong right where they're at. But when you have an opportunity to live amongst them, you see that some of them really aren't all that bad. They just made some screwed up damn decisions. And then there are those that truly belong right there, where they're at, never ever to get out again. And I was always real, I stood on my own 2 feet. I didn't participate in the drug trade that was going on. I didn't participate in any sexual, freak shit that was going on in the prison facility. And I tried to stay away from violence, My thing was all about educating people to, stop setting yourself up for failure, because that's what basically 99.9% of us that went to prison did. Set yourself up. You allowed the system of things to put you in a corner that you didn't think there was a way out of. So, you made bad decisions. But today, man, I'm haunted by, the memory of the good men that I met in prison, because there were a few. That once, I love hearing this term because it makes me realize that the idiot that speaks it is nothing more than a buffoon. Once a dope fiend, always a dope fiend. Once a crackhead, always a crackhead. I love hearing terms like that because it makes me aware of the person that's actually saying it. See, those are the people that will belittle broken folks while pretending to be something wholesome, while selling poison to the very people they claim to love and cherish. Behaviors that are not cohesive to human dignity. These are the people that say shit like that. And it just cracks me up. Because those are the very people that they're the very people that when shit hits the fan, they'll be the ones that say, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." It's pathetic. But those men that I did meet, good men, and there were a few. Any man that ever encountered me in prison knew I stood on 2 things. One, if you're going to be in that little tiny circle that I call my world, be real. Be honest, be true, be a damn man. Don't bring game to me, because game realizes game. I was a master gamer, so don't play it. 2, don't bring no homosexuality or weird shit into my world, because I won't tolerate it. And I won't tolerate you. Period. And I stood on those 2 beliefs. Period. And I survived on those 2 beliefs. And any man that knew me knew that. And a lot of good men were, left behind whenever I was paroled. Young men that had made foolish decisions and had gotten life sentences. I remember the very last time that I went back into a facility for a violation. The system, the Pennsylvania Department of Probation and Parole, took practically damn near 9 years of street time, good street time that I had on the street. I made a mistake, caught a DUI, they sent me back and said, well, no, it wasn't even a DUI, that was the first time I went back. The second time I went back was a domestic disturbance of which I was the victim. They sent me back into the facility. When I went back in there was a young man that had came into that facility. He was a child. He was 17 years old with a life sentence without the possibility of parole. And when I had went back in, almost 20 years later, this young man was still there. Almost unrecognizable, because he was no longer this frail child that I had met when I first, encountered him. The man that I did encounter when I went back was a man that I can see now that every seed I planted within that heart blossomed into a beautiful man, because he was a beautiful soul. He was not only this beefy, bulky ass white boy that would whoop some ass, but he was also a kind, gentle soul that took on an art that I had left behind whenever I went to prison, or whenever I left prison. See, when I left prison, I was practicing this art called paper filigree. It's this ancient Chinese or Asian, paper craft where you take these little wee widths of paper and you scroll them into different designs. It's amazing, it's time-consuming, and to me, every time I stood in front of a blank piece of cardstock, it was a conversation between God and I. The whole process. Every petal, anything and everything that I adorned a card with was a prayer. It was a communication between God and I. And whenever I got out of prison, I had planted so many seeds in the hearts of those young men that when I went back, I did have an opportunity to see the fruit of those seeds. That young man had grew into a phenomenal human being. And he was making greeting cards that could outdo anything that Hallmark or anyone else on the planet could do. Because not only did he incorporate what I was doing, he embellished it. Because he himself was a bit of an artist. And so he took on that art form. Not only that, but his dignity and his morals and his ethics stood so firm that he had told me that he was coming up for commutation, that he was seeking parole, and that he was highly successful at getting it. Now I was released before, he went up for commutation, and I sometimes wonder about him, along with some of the other men. Some of the very same men that when I went back into that facility, these were men that had became school teachers, drug and alcohol peer specialists, and it was amazing, man. So yeah, there are good men and women in prison. Made bad decisions, beaten, broken, battered, bruised, addicted, abandoned. The very same people that Christ walked amongst. Check your biblical history. He chose lepers, the blind, the idiots. He chose the broken. And it's amazing to realize that even some of those men and women throughout the world that are in prison right now are in his hands. Yeah, they're going to be going to heaven when they die. Despite their crimes, despite where they might be. Because he tells us, those that are in my Father's hands will never slip from them. And some of those very same men and women in prison are in his hands. So for someone to sit there and say with the audacity of arrogance and ignorance, once a dope fiend, always a dope fiend. Once a dope fiend, always a dope fiend. Once an alcoholic, once a convict, always a... Yeah. Try getting into heaven with that attitude. While pretending to be rich to the world, while broken on the inside. Maddening. Good men I left behind and the fucked up men I see out here.